Hello, and welcome back to the Studio I podcast. I hope you are having a wonderful day. For those who are watching on YouTube, yes, I look like a drowned rat, but this is because I am a drowned rat. It is pouring it down outside. I have been rained on twice, so my hair looks like an absolute disaster. But it's kind of a segue into this episode actually, because if it rains, life just gets that little bit more difficult. And that's exactly what I wanted to talk to you about today. Life can be incredibly difficult, but sometimes we are responsible for it being that difficult and we don't even realize it. So if you want to hear 10 different ways on how you can make your life just that little bit easier, just keep on listening. We are joined by Tempe, who's just a little purry boy, sleepy purry boy. Reminds me of Baby Yoda sometimes. So we were talking about ways on how to make our life easier. The first thing that has been a total lifesaver for me is to keep lists to fall back on. I have 5 here for you today, but if you think of anything else that could be a great list, make it, store it in a place where you can find it, and use it when you need it. Because sometimes all we need is a little reminder in life. When we try to remember everything, it becomes this one big jumbled up mess in our brains. So having a go-to list can actually be a fantastic resource. And the first list that, since I've made it a while ago, has changed my life is my bad day list. It is a list of things that I know will make me feel better, and I use that every single time when I have a bad day. Because I do have to force myself to go through that list, but it works because I know it will make me feel better. And if by the end of the list I don't feel better, I just know that I have to call it a day, and I just have to give up for that day and get on the couch, watch some Grey's Anatomy until I fall asleep. Because we all have those days, and those days are totally fine. But having resources on how you can make yourself feel better and how you can turn a bad day around is so helpful. With that also comes a resistance checklist. A resistance checklist is kind of the things that help you eliminate resistance. If you're feeling incredibly resistant to completing a certain task, you can fall back upon your resistance list. That resistance list will list out certain things that might cause resistance for you. For example, for me, I ask myself questions on that list. Being, have you broken it down into smaller to-dos? Do you have a clear idea as to why you are doing it? Asking myself questions that help me get over that resistance and deal with overwhelm, and to actually figure out why I am so resistant to starting that task. I then added to each and every single thing a way to actually fix that issue. For example, if I am overwhelmed by a task, well, that means that I have to break it down into smaller tasks until I am not overwhelmed anymore. Then the next list, and this is a list that everybody needs, whether it is in your mind, but sometimes you just need a reminder of it on paper or your computer. I keep it in my notes list on my phone because it's so important to me. It is a non-negotiable list. It is those things in life that you have learned through experience that you will not compromise on. And they can serve as reminders when temptation comes or when people ask you to lower your standards. When you have your non-negotiable list, it is so much easier to stick to it. This also works, for example, if you are house hunting, or if you are looking for a place to stay on vacation, or whatever it is. Make yourself a list of non-negotiable items and things that you need to have, no matter how much you want to, no matter how much you are falling for a certain person, a certain thing. If you don't have those things, you just know you will not be happy. And having them listed out for you and deciding on them before emotions get involved is a fantastic way to make sure that you don't make your life more difficult down the line, because then you will have to force yourself to live in a situation that isn't ideal, that you have created for yourself because you overstepped your boundaries. And for what? We always regret it in the end. So make that non-negotiable list, and stick to it. Another list that you might find me psychotic because I am suggesting this, but it's information about your friends list. Some people can keep this in their brain, and for a lot of my friends, I actually can keep this in my brain, but not for everyone, and especially not for new friends. So I make a point out of it to write down important information about my friends. And this isn't their birthday, because obviously their birthday you should remember. But think about their favorite colors, their favorite restaurants, what kind of flowers they prefer. In the beginning, those things might be really hard to remember. And by writing them down and making sure you have a list, you can actually be an amazing friend. Because your friend is down, take him to their favorite restaurant and they will appreciate it so much. And some people might argue that if you have to write it down, that you are less valuable of a friend and you don't care enough to remember. But I actually care enough to write it down so that I actually do remember when people tell me these things, because I know I would forget them otherwise, and that might make me a bad friend. I don't care, but I write them down because I do care and because I do want to remember. And talking about making your brain feel more clear is the someday list. We all have a million projects in our brain that we want to do, and instead of either saying no to all of them because you know you don't have the time and feeling sad about it, or trying to start all of them at the same time, or just simply forgetting about them. There's so many options here. Create a someday list. Create a list where you write down all of those ideas that you might want to do someday. That way they have a place. You have dedicated to maybe doing them one day, so you feel good about yourself. They don't have to be in your brain, and you also don't have to start them right away and overwhelm yourself. And you can go back to your someday list. A lot of people don't. Most of the time I don't. But when I am looking for new ideas and when I'm in a rut, I like to look at my someday list. And then it often brings me a lot of inspiration. But enough about lists. Let's move on to the next topic, and the next point being time management. Find a time management system that works for you. Don't try to force yourself to function in one that isn't made for you, because managing your time is hard enough as it is. But fighting yourself by trying to use a system that doesn't work for your brain, it is just a waste of energy and a waste of time. So try to find the time management system that you prefer, a system that works for you and that works with your brain, instead of trying to fit into a mold that was designed by somebody else. I have a good video about it, about time management systems, where you can pick and choose what kind of system works best for you. So if you would be interested in that, I will link it in the description box, in the little card, so you know where to find it. If you struggle with saying no, then this list, or this, it's actually it's another list, but I put it as a separate point. Stop saying yes to everything. In order to make your life easier, you have to stop saying yes to everything and every single thing people ask you. But a list, again, I'm here with my lists, can actually help you with that. Make a list of excuses when you can't say no. And instead of always saying yes to something right away, tell people that you have to check whether you have time or that you have to think about it. And there's nothing wrong with saying that. And then take a look at your list of excuses, pick one and run with that. That way you don't have to come up with a million different excuses. It will always be believable because you already thought about them beforehand, and you don't have to put in the brain power into saying no because you already have your list of excuses ready. And if you really, really struggle with saying no in the moment, then having that list in your notes app on your phone might also be good. So if you're, for example, going over a calendar of things to do at work, open up that list. Pretend like you're checking something in while you're discussing it. Have that list open, and when somebody says something that you really don't want to do, just look at your list, go, I know, I'm sorry, I just looked at my calendar, actually your list of excuses, and I can't because I have to do this weekend, or I have to do that, I have another obligation, whatever it is. Truly, that list is magical. Number 4, get clear on what you want from life. Life gets a lot easier when you know what you want to do with it, because it gives you direction and it makes taking decisions a lot easier. It makes daily actions a lot easier. And it just makes life a little bit more smooth sailing overall. I get it. If you're young or you really don't have an idea, try to come up with a vague one at least. Try to limit your options a little bit so you're not just flailing around. And that might not be what you want to hear. But once you have decided on a direction of life, it gets a lot easier to then also change it afterwards. The hardest part, think about it like starting a car. The hardest part that requires the most energy is starting, because you have to get that momentum going. Trying to move a car that is standing still is basically impossible. But once you're driving, you just have to do a little tip of the steering wheel and you're on your way. So that's the same thing with choosing a direction in life. Once you start moving, you can adjust along the way, but you have to start moving in a certain direction, because being stuck and just trying out a million different things without direction will only exhaust you. So try to come up with a detailed or a vague plan of where you want to go in life and stick with it and just start going. And after 3, 6 months or a year, if you want to adjust that idea and that plan, you totally can. But right now, just get an idea and start going, and you will feel so much better, because you actually have direction in your life, because you actually know where you're going, and you actually can see whether the actions that you're doing and the things that you're doing deliver you results, what will give you a more satisfied feeling, which will then in return make you happier, making life a little easier. Number 5 is one that we all know, and I'm gonna say it again because I also really need a reminder sometimes. And it is to keep your living and workspaces organized. I am one of the most disorganized and messy people that you can ever meet. It is a constant battle, but I do feel a lot better when things are clean. And as a completely disorganized person, the best advice that I can give you in this area is to actually make sure that there's nothing that doesn't have a place. Because if something doesn't have a place, it will end up everywhere. So before something comes into your house, you need to know where it will go. Or as soon as you receive a gift or something, you need to create a place for it. You can't have, like for me, for example, I don't have a place for my mail. I will have to create a place for my mail, because right now my mail is everywhere. It is in the hallway, it is on my desk, it is on the kitchen counter, it is in the bedroom, it's everywhere. It is absolutely everywhere. So if I don't have a place for it, I lose it. I lose it as well. I forget about it. So make sure that every single thing in your home has a place, and keeping it clean will become a whole lot easier. And if you still mess up, cleaning up will be so much easier as well, because you know where everything has to go and you don't have to shove a bunch of crap under your bed like I used to do. It's not the way to go anymore. If you want to create your dream life and you really want to have a fulfilling life, you can't be shoving things under your bed anymore. Another one that is maybe quite obvious but still so important, it's getting enough sleep and prioritizing self-care. Because life is a lot harder when you don't sleep enough, because you're constantly tired. I know it may be fun to do as many things as possible, but it actually makes life a lot harder, as well as not taking care of yourself. Eating healthy will make your life easier because you're more nourished, and when you're well nourished, your brain works better, your body works better, it works with you instead of against you. So sleep enough, eat healthy. Also, I'm sorry, but exercise does make your life easier. It does make it better, because it actually is a way for your body to process stress. Exercise is so important. And once you are in shape, you'll see that your life actually does get a little easier. it's easier to get things done. You have more energy, and that actually really, really helps. As well as finding a way to reduce stress, because stress doesn't leave the body on its own. It actually stays there if you don't have a proper way of getting it out. Exercise can be a good way for this, but for a more creative person, it might be painting or singing or just having a way for your body to actually process that stress is a very important self-care technique that will also make your life a lot easier. My next tip on making your life a lot easier probably isn't one that you're gonna like. It's probably not one that you're gonna like, but it's very impactful. It is to learn how to have difficult conversations. A lot of your problems in life can be fixed by just having a hard conversation. We often avoid these conversations like they are the plague, but just having it might actually solve a lot of your problems. If you are constantly annoyed by your partner, telling him instead of dealing with it, even though he might get mad and even though it might be a very unpleasant experience, might actually solve the issue. If your boss is treating you like his little bitch, having that conversation and telling him to stop isn't easy, but it will make your life a lot easier. And sometimes those hard conversations might be even harder, like cutting people out of your life, breaking up with a boyfriend or girlfriend that doesn't treat you the right way, quitting your job. But learning to have those conversations, practicing those conversations, and not avoiding them will make your life a whole lot easier in the long run. It's basically just showing up for yourself, putting your boundaries there, putting yourself first, instead of being a people pleaser and just trying to make everybody around you happy. Have those conversations and make yourself happy first. Think about what you can handle first instead of trying to fit in the mold that another person designed for you, because that will inevitably make your life a whole lot harder than it needs to be. An obvious one maybe is delegating. Delegating and outsourcing is an easy way to make your life a little lighter. But when people say delegate, they often immediately think about work. They think at work I have to give tasks to other people and that will make my life better. And we all know this, but we might not actually want to delegate because we think that we are the best at doing things and we don't want to hand it off. Don't do that. Just hand it off. Just delegate. But at work, I think we all know. And so I'm not going to go deeper into the part of delegating at work. But what we often forget is delegating at home is also a thing. Delegating in your hobbies is also a thing. And that is the area where we most often forget that we actually can delegate, especially at home. If you are carrying 100% of the household chores on your shoulders right now, you can at least delegate 50%. Because it should be equal between you and your partner, you and your parents, you and your I was gonna say you and your dog, but that doesn't make any sense. The dog cannot take out the trash. Try to delegate those things that you do at home that you just simply don't have to be doing or you don't want to be doing. With delegating also comes automating. Automating tasks is even better than delegating because then nobody has to do them for you. I want to give you 5 examples of things that you can delegate, that you can automate, but you can probably do a lot more things. You can actually automate so many things that you don't think about. There's grocery services that exist that order the same groceries for you every single week that come to your house that you don't have to do anything about. I mean, that sounds like heaven to me. You can automate all of your payments each month. You can let your bank pay your bills for you. You don't have to be doing that yourself. You can automate having to think about things by setting up reminders in your phone so things don't have to take up space in your head and you don't forget to do them, which then leads to last minute crisis, which is a lot harder than just staying organized and on top of things. You can have a recurring order. You can have subscriptions on toilet paper and cleaning materials and basically anything nowadays. You can have that show up to your door every single month when you need it. Google the thing that you don't like doing. For example, order toilet paper and then add automate after it. And you will be surprised how many things you can automate. It might also not be necessarily an automatic system. It also might be food, for example. If you really, really hate cooking, look into healthy frozen meals that you can get delivered to your door. I get a lot of ads for those things. And actually, I'm quite interested in them because that would mean that for lunch, for example, I would just have to pop it in the microwave and it's still nutritious. So that is also a very great way to automate things and delegate it, kind of, because I'm delegating making my lunch to somebody else. There's a million ways to delegate and automate, and it's one of the easiest ways to make your life a little easier. But I also do realize that it might cost a little more money. So if you are not in the position right now where you can automate or delegate your things, making a list of the things that you want to automate or delegate and then actually taking steps to work towards those things can also help to make your life easier, but then in the long run, because you know what you are working towards, which was point number 4, I think, in this podcast. And with that also, there's kind of a golden triangle for an easy life. It is having control. So knowing what you're doing. Control, direction, and processing. I think that is the golden triangle to an easier life. So having control about your life, knowing what's going on. And with that also comes, for example, having control of your finances. You can't change your finances right away, and I am aware of that, but you should at least know what's going on. You should have control over them. You should know where you're going. You should have clear goals and a destination and a direction in life. And you need to have ways to process life. You need to have ways how to get stress out of your body, but also how to process things in your brain and to improve your life in the long run. So you actually learn from past experiences and you don't keep on making the same mistakes over and over and over again. And with that actually comes routines. Processing can be a routine. You can have a journaling routine. You can have a monthly planning routine, a weekly planning routine. Don't underestimate the power of a good routine, because routines require less brain power, because your brain will eventually get used to it. So if you have a morning routine, evening routine, reset routine, planning routine, eventually you can do all of those things on autopilot, because your brain will actually do them without you thinking about it. And anything that you can do on autopilot requires a lot less energy than the things that you actually have to think about. So come up with routines for the things that you want to simplify and stick to them. And eventually you will see that those things become a whole lot easier to do. And that was it for my 10 things to make your life a little easier. Some of them you can implement right away. Other things you might have to think about and go a little bit more in depth about. But that's just how all of these lists are. If I would just give you 10 things that would make you, like, you can do right now, they wouldn't offer as much value as some things that you might have to take some time to implement. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, you can always subscribe to the podcast, give it a like, subscribe to the YouTube channel, check me out on other social channels. And I suck at ending podcast episodes, so I'm just gonna end it here. I hope you enjoyed. I will see you later. Toodaloo!